Good evening. Today is the 21st day of November 2016. And in our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri, we are still in the book of the Traveler of the Worlds, where we'll be for some time. And Canto 5, the Godheads of the Little Life, and as always, with Alok Pandey. Page 169, and I'll read the two lines especially, three lines that are so powerful, and they just seem to touch one within. Across the cosmic field, through narrow lanes, asking a scanty dole from fortune's hands, and garbed in beggars' robes, there walks the one.
Very powerful. It, in fact, we had closed last time with these lines, and because we had run out of time in a way, it had reminded me of a story of Sri Ramakrishna, where a person carries a lantern in his hand and he needs some fire to light up his fireplace. And he goes from door to door asking for some fire, till someone tells him, "But fool, you are carrying the fire with you." So we are like that. We are looking for fire. Yes. Looking for bliss, looking for love, looking for peace. And by putting conditions that if I get this from this one, I'll have peace and joy, I put that many bars between me and the delight that anyway surrounds all, which is my origin. That's what Sri Aurobindo reminds us. Of course, the Upanishads remind us, and Sri Aurobindo reaffirms that we are children of immortality, we are children of bliss. Amritasya putra, anandasya putra. And we read that also. What we have forgotten it, just before these three lines we have, our lives, a deeper mystery than we have dreamed. Our minds are starters in the race to God. We think it's the end. Mind is only a springboard for the spirit to go beyond.
I love that image of a starter.
But we think that's the end of the journey.
Yeah.
Our minds are starters in the race to God. Our souls, deputed selves of the Supreme. Can we imagine? This is our true inheritance. And if we remember it, what fear can we ever have in any circumstance or situation? How can we lose hope if we remember that this is what we are? So,
help me with that line, that passage from Synthesis. All that is He.
yes.
And He is the more than all that is.
Yes.
And we, though we know it not, are being of His being, conscious with a consciousness derived from His.
Yes. Is a beautiful prayer of the Mother, which she says is one of her most favorite prayers. Thou who art the light of my intelligence, the life of my life. So this, when we connect with that, but we have all kinds of relations except the one to whom we should be related. So hence this misery and the small life. Now we have another interesting image. Even in the theater of these small lives, very often we have these analogies given that life is like a theater where God pulls the strings. So God will say, "Excuse me, you have not given your strings to me." So our strings have been given to all the beings and forces and energies of the lower vital world. And hence, God doesn't directly pull our strings. He pulls these forces because ultimately He calls the last shot. But through all these intermediaries, which Mother has used the word formatures, And each of them distorts or deflects the divine will. It is only when we give ourselves completely to God that He starts pulling our strings directly, not otherwise. So, this is an important distinction, and because of that, the story of a life becomes a very mean plot. So, because it's a story written by the ego, story written by desire. So, even if we try to do it on a mega scale, it's poor direction. Like, when a director is poor, the producer may pour a lot of money. You may go to this location, that location, but the plot will always be very badly directed, and you can feel it. So here, that it's not that everyone has this theater of small life, but here Sri Aurobindo is referring to the kingdoms of the little life. When we have lent ourselves to the lower vital, even in the theater of these small lives, and yet there is hope. Behind the act, a secret sweetness breathes, an urge of miniature divinity. Even in the smallness, even in the animal creation, leave aside human beings. Look at the way a mother tends its baby, and you will feel here too there is divinity. The way she guards, protects, nurtures, nourishes, cares, sleepless vigil. Mother gives the example of that cat. And she, not the soul, but part of the being of a Russian lady had incarnated in her. And she had found her way to the ashram. And because her children had died in a very unfortunate tragedy, even as a mother cat, she carried that impression. So she would guard these little kittens. As soon as they were born, she would not leave them for anything. It was very difficult now. Till one day she learned the trick, a trick we all should learn. She took them one by one and put them at mother's feet.
At mother's feet, yes.
And got free. Reminds me of our beloved Nalnida. He had 4 children. And someone complained to the mother, "Mother, he doesn't look after his children." So mother called Nalnida and said, "What is it, Nalni? I hear you don't take care of your children." He said, "Mother, but they are your children." They are your children. That was the end of the story. So, there is a way to, even in this smallness, there is a secret sweetness, an urge of miniature divinity. You see, this is the system in India. Even a small little statue of God is God. So, miniature divinity. I remember someone once asked Champaklaji for a picture of the mother, and he gave a small picture of the mother to him. So the person said, "But this is very small." Champaklaji suddenly, his mood could change. He snatched it away. He said, "Go, you don't. Small. This is mother. Small picture." So we see that, urge of miniature divinity, urge that trend towards a mystic passion from the wells of God flows through the guarded spaces of the soul. A force that helps, supports the suffering earth. An unseen nearness and a hidden joy. That's why we should not look down upon anything. Because in everything a secret sweetness dwells. In everything the divine dwells. In everything the soul can awake at what moment we don't know. And again the synthesis, Sri Aurobindo says that therefore the wise never limit the possibilities of man through any narrow wicket gate he can enter. And he refers to the famous sloka of the Gita, that even a woman of lowliest birth, or a tied with 100 bonds, or a man engaged in the lowliest of things, even if they start taking the name of God, you should regard them as saints. Because very soon they get liberated from their past bonds and are freed unto me, delivered unto me. It's because everywhere this spark is there, and everywhere, when it will catch a fire and light up the whole house, we don't know.
And Sri Aurobindo again and again speaks of this bliss that
Yes.
has made the world.
Yes, a secret bliss is at the very root of things in Savitri. So there is a nearness and a hidden joy. Countless people have these experiences, the touch of God upon their lives, in whatever way. A force that helps, supports the suffering earth. There are muffled throbs of laughter's undertones. What a lovely line this is. The murmur of an occult happiness. An exultation in the depths of sleep. A heart of bliss within a world of pain. On the eve of 24th Siddhi Day, the day when Krishna descended, he is leading us to Krishna in another way. A heart of bliss within a world of pain. This is something which I must say, so many people experience in their own ways, but I have seen it in my own little way. So many ways, but one experience that comes to my mind is that when as a young Air Force officer, I was sent to one of the forward areas just on the base of Siachen. So, that's a place sometimes shelling goes on and all this. So everybody was, oh my God, where are you going? Is it safe and all? I said, don't worry, everything is safe. It was a safe place. It was not like exactly forward post. But the joy that I experienced there, those 3 months in that so-called hardship, everybody felt, oh, it's a tough thing and, but you can't imagine that when shelling is going on, people sit in bunkers and they have tea and pakoras. And they are so happy. It's cool. Now, where does that joy come from? It's right in the heart of danger. You may die. And people are celebrating life in the midst of dance of death. They are thinking about, oh, we are going to have this lunch. Wonderful. And it's the same lunch because you don't get any vegetables. So once in a while, the aircraft will come with only potatoes and carrots. And all kinds of variations of potato were made. And it was such a happiness. So, even where there is pain, there is that joy can touch us and lift us to,
And that pain, remember the story of the book of the Lost Footsteps?
Yes. Sylvia,
Yes.
de Sylvia.
He was tortured,
Yes.
terribly tortured by the Germans. And Sri Aurobindo came to him
Yes.
and told him how to get out of his body. while the torture was going on.
When he wanted to commit suicide, at that point of time, he had the apparition of Sri Aurobindo coming, and he used to call Sri Aurobindo as Robin do Ghosh,
Aurobindo Ghosh.
because he couldn't get the name. So
was
Robin
Romanian.
do Ghosh,
It was Romanian name.
Romanian name, Robin do Ghosh, instead of Aurobindo Ghosh. So it's there is this touch, but it's very unfortunate when we see somebody in pain. Instead of giving that touch, we say, oh my God, how much you must be suffering, making suffering worse. He already knows how much he is suffering. Let's not make it worse. So, a heart of bliss within a world of pain. It's a marvelous line. An infant, now see Krishna, the baby Krishna, mother says mother at one place says, you know why he is portrayed always as a child? And as a youthful God, because he is always progressing and moving forward. So that's the sense of the baby Krishna. So Sri Aurobindo brings this image of baby Krishna beautifully here. He child Krishna. And so nice that we are reading it just on the
Yes.
almost the eve of 24th November.
The whole
And
4 lines.
yes, an infant nursed on nature's covert breast. An infant playing in the magic woods, fluting to rapture by the spirit's streams. This is Yamuna. Spirit's streams fluting to rapture. Awaits the hour when we shall turn to his call. Even in this smallness, even when we are indulging in the lowest of lowly things, still he plays the flute. Still he draws the soul. Still he sends the call. That's all that he does. He doesn't judge, condemn, says, yes, you deserve to be here. Nothing. He just plays the flute, hear, and be filled with rapture and rush and embrace, or ignore and continue to take this. But He's there. In this investiture of fleshly life, a soul that is a spark of God survives. And sometimes it breaks through the sordid screen and kindles a fire that makes us half divine. We don't understand its importance. Mother says, just because of this soul, man is greater than the gods. He can become greater than the gods. He alone of all the creatures has a possibility of direct connection with the Supreme. So when we choose to go through the gods, is going through the lesser or a more complicated path. Man can directly connect with the Supreme. This possibility is there because he has this soul within.
And kindles a
Kindles
fire.
it, makes us half divine.
So many here, I'm sure,
Yeah.
have had that fire kindled
Yes,
at one
absolutely.
point or another.
Yes. It
Because
makes
we
us-
wouldn't be here otherwise.
Absolutely. And it survives. It does not give up. It does not lose hope. It carries the journey. In our body's cells, there sits a hidden power that sees the unseen and plans eternity. So, we think of, oh, this life, this death, this disease, this is our vision. But there is a power that is sitting there, which when it sees that, well, this body is no more, it cannot serve the purpose of the evolution anymore, so it discards it and goes and takes up another body, sees the unseen, and plans eternity, not just a small little. And that's why there is death. When the psychic chooses, when it feels that no, progress cannot take place anymore in a body. The body may be damaged due to accident, disease, or any issue. But till it decides, death cannot come. It can hover around, it can linger, but it needs permission or allowance by the soul. And now a marvelous line, our smallest parts have room for deepest needs. And this he would repeat after a few lines again in another way. And that means that the most lowest of the lowest parts in us, even the most obscure cell, has a possibility of being lifted to its divine heights. So our smallest parts have room for deepest needs. So nothing is condemned, nothing is excluded. Everything can become part of the yoga. But of course, it's a vast yoga, not just a limited yoga of the soul uniting with the Supreme. There too, in the smallest parts, there too the golden messengers can come. A door is cut in the mud wall of self. Across the lowly threshold with bowed heads, angels of ecstasy and self-giving pass, and lodged in an inner sanctuary of dream, the makers of the image of deity live.
How beautiful.
How beautiful. In this fleshly life, where we are surrounded all around with matter, suddenly a door can be cut. And look what a description, It reminded me of two things, and it's very symbolic. There is a very famous story in India, the story of Nala and Damayanti. So Nal is a prince and Damayanti is the princess. It's a very long story, so I'll not go into it. But they love each other, they get separated, and they again come together. So it's the story of the soul and the nature. That's how the story has to be seen. And the symbol becomes very clear when towards the end, finally there is a last test that Nal has to undergo to confirm that he indeed is the real Nal, because they are separated. And he has come disguised, and besides he has been cursed and his whole body has changed. So the real Nal had a capacity to pass through very small, low door, low ceilings. He had this ability. And so the princess deliberately asks him to come and pass through a low door. And he does it. And she knows that it is he. Now, this is one story. Another is Amarnath, where when we go to the temple, you have to go through a very, very narrow passage where you have to, bow down. Now, it's so symbolic that you have to have humility before the divine. So it's a low door through which one passes. There is a door cut. The soul can pass through it, the ego cannot. Because the ego is always full of its pride. It says, why should I? It's very interesting when you stand outside, sometimes outside the ashram, some people start arguing. Well, justified or not justified is a different matter. Why should I see somebody going with chappals? Why can't I take it? Then the person is trying to explain they are residents, they have work, etc., etc. But the point is, that's not what you have gone there for. Not to prove a point whether you can carry the chappal or not. You have gone to meet the Lord. Go any which way. It's irrelevant. So that's where bowed heads. But if we keep our egos and want to remain, in the ashram it is hit very hard.
Yes.
You can't live if you want to keep the ego intact. It will be chiseled and hammered at every which way. So, bowed heads.
This mother said once, she was asked, because I was taking care of the service tree at that time, and the branch came quite low. And they wanted to cut it, and I didn't want to cut it. So we wrote to Mother, and Mother said they should learn to bow their heads.
Yes. They should learn to bow their heads. So true. It's beautiful.
And these angels of ecstasy
and self-giving.
have bowed heads.
Yes.
They're coming with bowed heads.
And self-giving. Even in these small lives. You see, sometimes when you look at the animals and look at their ability to give themselves, towards someone whom they feel a little love, it's amazing. And it's so true. It's there in the Upanishads, and the mother says that, and Aurobindo also says that, we think we are the greatest of creations. Well, we can become the greatest of creations, but only if we awaken the soul. Otherwise, if we compare qualities, we are worse than animals in many ways. So, makers of the image of deity, the gods, the angels, who will make this bodily image and give form to our inner being to reflect the deity. And what are some of these soul movements in our humanity? Pity is there, and fire-winged sacrifice, not just an ordinary sacrifice. Fire-winged sacrifice. And this pity is not a pity of weak pity that at different places Mother and Aurobindo have explained. Yeah. But something which is kind, compassionate, something strong which can uplift. There is a pity which makes us turn away from pain. We resonate with the pain but turn away because we can't bear it. But there is a pity which is strong, the pity of the strong over someone who is suffering and whom they can lift out. So pity is there, and fire-winged sacrifice.
And Mother has two flowers. One she calls divine solicitude, and the other one divine solicitude rightly understood.
Oh, yes.
That's solicitude, yes. You see,
yes,
of the Divine Mother.
Yes. Fire-winged sacrifice. An absolute giving of oneself regardless. And flashes of sympathy and tenderness. So these are soul movements, and that's why in one of the letters, when Dilip Kumar Roy often misunderstood, that he thought Aurobindo doesn't want us to mix, mingle, smile at each other. We should always be cross as sadhak. So he kept asking such questions because he had a very expansive vital. So he would often ask that, it looks like in your ashram, it's almost the rule that sadhak should be at daggers drawn with each other, should not smile. And Aurobindo takes pains to explain that friendship and affection are indispensable notes. And then he explains love, tenderness, loyalty, fidelity. These are they are movements of the psychic in us. They should not be crushed. But precisely because we see that these movements, friendship, etc., come under the ego comes and destroys them. That's why we want them to be based on a secure basis. Yes. And not to see hearts broken at every moment. So that was his whole effort, that bring out the soul. Then you are on a sure footing. You are grounded well. Otherwise, it ends up like any other story.
And then they wrote to him and said, Bhakti is not
Yes.
part of the ashram, the
Yes.
sadhana.
All kinds of creatures. And flashes of sympathy and tenderness cast heaven lights from the heart's secluded shrine. So it's the light from there which makes us fill with tenderness, kindness, sympathy. A work is done in the deep silences. A glory and wonder of spiritual sense, a laughter in beauty's everlasting space, transforming world experience into joy. Inhabit the mystery of the untouched gulfs. See, this transforming world experience into joy comes again in World Soul, where Aurobindo again speaks of Krishna but in another dimension, and where he says that what does he do? He transforms all experience into delight. So how does it happen? There is a very simple everyday experience of every one of us. When we look back 10 years back, surely we would have experienced some pain or the other. Maybe, if nothing else, an examination which was of utmost importance to us. Or maybe a jilted love which gave us a lot of pain. But 10 years down the line, when we look back, we laugh at it all. And that's why we can tell others, don't worry, after 10 years you will laugh at it. It's just a moment that will pass away. But at that point of time, it's extremely painful. And it's true that some people are so much caught in the pain that they unfortunately end up doing tragic things. But if they only waited, that who sits within us will transform it into delight. It will change into a laughter. I'm sure many of us, I have had a number of these things when I look back at all the stupidities. I just, once Chaman Lalji told me something very nice, very beautiful, in his own inimitable style.
Yes.
Wished me happy birthday. So how old are you? I said, I'm 56. He said, let me remember the exact words. He said, too young to be wise, too old to do stupid things. Something like that. I said, yes, you got it right. You got it right. So, obviously everybody does stupid things and then we laugh over it. And, we understand it changes into delight by the God touch. Unless we carry a big burden and remember that's where something is amiss. Otherwise, in most of us life, it changes into something else, which is beautiful. And people who are 50 will connect with it, I'm sure. Or maybe those even less than that. So, transforming world experience into joy. All experience, the seemingly good, the seemingly bad. Yeah. When people look back upon their lives, they don't look at... Mostly they see things which were joyous. Ask anyone to recount their life. And barring a few, they will, you remember I went there and this happened. You remember I went there. Or I'll tell you about this. These generally, experiences which are like point to point of joy. But when we are going through it, there are all kinds of issues.
But it's those experiences when we are about to leave that stay
that
with us.
Yes, they are still with us. And they come to us like a flash, like a review. That's what we should do when we are standing in queues for ATM. We should remember life with joy and remember what a wonderful cause this is. It will end in joy. It begins with joy. Momentary discomfort notwithstanding. Lulled by time's beats, eternity sleeps in us.
Oh, what a line.
What a line. We are running from moment to moment. From event to event, from circumstance to circumstance, situation to situation, from phenomena to phenomena, from appearance to appearance, from scene to scene. Times beats. So what happens? Eternity goes off to sleep. So this fellow is too busy. When he will be done with it, then he will perhaps wake up to me, who am sleeping inside. God says, I am going to sleep for a while. You play your toys. When you are done with it, you will call me. Like children, when they are busy playing. So they keep playing. And mother is busy preparing. She will call once, twice, come, come, food is ready. Child is not, he is busy with playing. After some time, he feels the hunger. Then, whatever be the toy, mama, is it ready? It's ready for a long time, my child. So, the divine has made everything ready for us. We are busy with the toys. He just waits that we once turn and say, Mother, where is that meal which you offered to the gods? You know that prayer of mother? Since man was not ready, not prepared to take the meal that I had prepared for him, I offered it to you, O Lord. So, in the sealed hermetic heart, the happy core, the core in us is happy. It's full of bliss, sweetness, peace. So, how to find peace? Go into the core. As simple as that. And the closer we get to the soul, the more we will be spontaneously at peace and happy. This will be the sign. Unmoved behind this outer shape of death, the eternal entity prepares within its matter of divine felicity. Unmoved by this shape of death. All the experiences of our outer life. The Divine Mother is inside preparing another life for us. Life far more beautiful. Its reign of heavenly phenomenon. Even in our skeptic mind of ignorance, a foresight comes of some immense release. Our will lifts towards it, slow and shaping hands. Each part in us desires its absolute. The same thing. Our smallest parts have room for deepest needs. Each part in us desires its absolute. Even the lowest of the low movements can be transformed into their divine equivalent because they all derive from the divine, and here we experience them as shadow. Mother gives an interesting example of somebody who is greedy and a man of avarice. So she says that people who are misers and who hoard lot of things, they won't part with it. So someone asks, what is this movement? She says it is the shadow of another movement which is essentially about concentration. The ability to draw forces to oneself and concentrate, which is a divine movement. But here when it comes into the ego usurps it, then it starts hoarding things, saving things, wanting more things. But even in that obscure movement, greed, avarice, it owes its origin to something in the divine. Rudra, anger is a movement of weak vital. It's the Rudra energy usurped by the ego and a very weak vital. People with a weak vital get angry. But this also derives from something corresponding in the higher self. And the mother speaks of it that only twice she experienced the Rudra energy coming to her and she asked it to go away. Because she says, I don't want that method. She says, once a little touch came and she says, it's so devastating. So it should be kept away. That's why even when somebody gave a Rudraksh, he said, don't use it. And if you have to use it with that Tulsi's, which is dear to Vishnu, because its effect will be destructive. Destructive on ego, but well, we cling to it, no? We'll feel a lot of pain. Then we'll say, why God is doing this to me? So she would keep away because that was not the method she liked. When Kali would come, she would hold her. Kali would come and say, your children, you call them your children? You want to build new creation out of this stuff? I am going to wipe it all clean. And mother would say, no, don't worry. I know my job. Please stay quiet. She would say, I would keep on always telling her to stay quiet. So often she would come and mother would tell her to stay quiet. And then when she would go, she would carry on with her work, that transcendent love. Even lust, at one point, Aurobindo says in his later writings, derives itself from something which is a shadow of the divine. And here it has to be discarded, it has to be thrown aside. But Sri Aurobindo gives us a clue. What is the way? In ascetic paths, it's by complete suppression of it. In this yoga, it is by sanyama, then rejection, then it goes out, but that part changes into something else. And Sri Aurobindo says that there is a divine principle behind it. It's there in his latest writings, 1949, Supramental Manifestation. So everything carries within it something of the divine. And so he says each part in us desires its absolute. So, to just elaborate on this, our thoughts covet the everlasting light. Our strength derives from an omnipotent force. So quieter we become, the more the stronger we become, because it derives from that. But the more we throw out this strength for our small ego issues, start shouting at the top of our voice, quarrel for, what silly things, whether the food is like this or like that, then this strength is gone. But if we conserve it, then it can give what kind of strength? Yogis are known to have. Sri Aurobindo could stop the entire elemental forces by his mere presence. What kind of strength that is? Revive the dead. So this strength derives from, so even our strength derives from that. And since from a veiled God joy the worlds were made, and since eternal beauty asks for form, even here where all is made of being's dust, our hearts are captured by ensnaring shapes. Our very senses blindly seek for bliss. Nobody could have said it even better. This is what I was referring to. And that is why the touch of the divine in matter. That is the only thing that can free us completely of this, or rather transform these senses. Because inwardly you can feel the divine touch and everything. But matter, because it seeks for form. Senses seek. And when the divine withdraws from the physical sight, it's maddening.
And beauty asks for
form.
And how Mother speaks of beauty.
Yes.
The importance of beauty in our lives.
And when you miss the body of God, it can be maddening. Look at, what happened to gopis, what happened when Sri Aurobindo withdrew. That's beauty manifested in a most perfect form. Some of these disciples were totally distraught. A couple of them went away. Suresh Chakravarti, Moni.
Moni went away.
Went away. Quite a few others. Mother herself, 12 days, she was all withdrawn. She was just wondering, should I continue? She said it was very easy for me to withdraw.
Yeah.
But compassion, looking at the children, and of course, calling her, she came back, she came out. Because that's the beauty. It seeks for form. It's not grief of an outer kind. Because it seeks for form. There is a very nice couplet. There was a great poet saint, mystic, not saint, great poet mystic, Amir Khusro. And he had a very handsome guru, Nizamuddin, Hazrat Nizamuddin. And so when Hazrat Nizamuddin died, so his whole body was lying in state, he had long hairs, all hairs flowing. So he wrote a couplet looking at that body. He compares, because he loved him so much, like Hazrat Nizamuddin was his beloved. So he compares his body to a beloved. And he says, Gori soi sej pe mukh bikhraye kesh. The unparalleled beauty, Gori, the fair one, is lying on the bed. And her hairs are all flown around her body. Or his body, it doesn't matter. Gori soi sej pe mukh bikhraye kesh. Chal Khusro ghar aapne, ab rehna bhai videsh. Khusro, let's go back to our home. Now it is night here. And he sees his master's body lying in state. He says, now it is night. Let's go to our home. That can be the impact. Because one seeks the very body. That's why the divine touch in matter. It satisfies a very deep urge in man. How much thousands of inner experiences, subjective experiences, but nothing compared to one physical touch of the mother. Sri Aurobindo's letter. Thousands of inner experiences. You may have Brahman in your inner state. You may realize great truths.
Yes.
But one physical touch of the mother, incomparable. I think we'll stop here. Our hearts are captured by ensnaring shapes. Even here, where all is made of being's dust, our hearts are captured by ensnaring shapes. Our very senses blindly seek for bliss.